Recoil and spread, a new ammo type. The RPG allegedly got nerfed. The netcode was improved. We'll see about that. There's a new event. The snipers got nerfed. All sort of things happened in the new update, which has been live for a good 2 days now. When this video comes out, probably 3. I've obviously played it, tested it, and this here is my first impression of the whole thing. There will be more detailed tests regarding the recoil and the spread. You definitely shouldn't miss that, so leave a sub right now. The new update is here with a new part, Dirty Work, in Battlefield 6. A lot was changed. The update is being hyped up a bit at the beginning, that the gunplay is finally awesome now, and so on. And of course we're going to look at that first. Spread and recoil. First the recoil, because that goes faster. That was supposed to be more consistent now, meaning there shouldn't be so much variation anymore, that the weapon breaks out to the left sometimes, to the right, up, down, all around town, everything. It actually depends entirely on which weapon you play. I tested it with the SG553 since it has relatively high recoil, and there I have to say I was a bit surprised that there actually isn't really little variation. So it still went straight sometimes to the right, sometimes to the left in terms of recoil. More to the right, I have to say. That obviously also has to do a bit with the spread. No questions, but I had hoped for a bit more regarding consistency. Because if you know the weapon then, and know where the recoil goes, you can learn it. And you can counter it well. On mouse, of course, and on controller too. And then you're better. That creates a skill ceiling, just like the spread was supposed to do. And there I also have to say, yes, there is more spread for people who maybe don't play as much Battlefield as me, because I make content about it and so on. It's clear somehow this might be relatively subtle, and I believe there will be many who will right away write in the comments right now that they don't notice that much of it to almost nothing at all. I've already heard or read those comments on the internet, but it is definitely noticeable. I think you notice it the most when you actually shoot for a very long time with a full automatic weapon. That means after like half of a magazine or so, it really stood out to me. Even with the SGX, which is an absolute laser, you notice it. The AK-205 is even more accurate, but not far behind the SGX. You notice it here after about, I don't know exactly, 7 or 8 shots. I didn't count them now, but that's where you kind of notice the bullets just don't go where the crosshair, or rather the red dot, is aiming anymore. With other weapons, you notice that a lot more. LMGs, for example, are really bad there. I think the spread is actually very strong with LMGs. These changes to the weapons are supposed to create a skill gap, or rather allow better players to stand out a bit more from the really normal players or casuals. Those aren't meant to be swear words, just people who just don't play as much. You can simply counter the recoil better with a weapon that you know when the recoil is consistent. You can tap fire at longer distances, and so on. I have to say I didn't notice the spread that much either, because I always started to tap relatively early, even before the patch in Battlefield 6 anyway, because you simply hit better. You have to keep your nerves a bit, stay calm, and then you very often win the gunfight. Yes, that is even more valuable now. That's kind of what I'm taking away from it. You definitely notice it, but the changes are relatively subtle, I would say. I still wish they would rather solve it via recoil, that the weapon still shoots where you aim, but then you simply have to have more recoil, a lot more. But in times of crossplay, that is not really possible, because that would have to be a whole lot of recoil, so that you can't counter it that hard with a mouse anymore. Bleeding right into that is the change to the snipers, namely the bullets now have less velocity when they leave the barrel. Around about 5% roughly slower, so it's not really a lot and not really noticeable. At very long distances, you notice it eventually. But what you notice even more is actually that the bullets lose a lot more velocity from 150 meters onwards now, and thereby also have more bullet drop or drag. So if you shoot over 150 meters with a sniper, you have to lead a lot more and also aim higher, because as I said, the bullets take longer and the drop is stronger. Although this drop and this decrease in velocities after 150 meters are far more difficult to handle than the 5% less muzzle velocity right at the start. But sniping has become harder, and that's a good thing. I think this change is great. There's also a new ammo type, the subsonic ammo. Maybe you have already discovered it. In any case, the point of the whole thing is the bullets are very slow. I played it with the UMP, tried it out relatively at the end of the session, so not for too long. 300 meters per second, that is relatively slow. That means you have to start leading relatively early. The advantage of it is supposed to be that you sometimes don't get spotted in-world. Unfortunately, they don't go into detail on what those criteria are for not getting spotted. They should maybe add that, put that into the game dice. And besides that, the distance at which you can be seen on the minimap is also reduced a little bit. There too, it doesn't say that right away. You gotta check the deeper statistics or whatever it's called to see the exact details. I thought to myself, maybe that is a way to counter that pretty much everybody plays suppressors in Battlefield 6, because it's extremely important that you don't always get spotted on the minimap and directly in-world with your red triangle over your head or diamond-shaped thing, whatever. Maybe that is the way to counter it. That you don't always need a suppressor, but you can also use one of the other muzzle brakes, etc. Sometimes to maybe improve your precision and control with a weapon a little bit more and still not necessarily show up everywhere and light up like a Christmas tree. Yeah, simply creating other options. That's how it seems to me. So there is the normal subsonic ammo, which is just slower and has these advantages regarding spotting. And then there is the subsonic headshot ammo. That one increases the headshot multipliers to 1.57. I felt somehow quite comfortable with the ammo, I must say. But of course, it's a bit difficult to evaluate in 2 or 3 sessions. Speaking of hits and headshot multipliers, that was changed too. That means it now does a lot less. That's exaggerated. Only less damage to arms, legs and the lower body, and you definitely notice that in gunfights. If you aim poorly, you now sometimes need one more bullet for a kill. You notice that here and there. You might know this when you shoot at someone and then your internal timing tells you, okay, he's dead now, and then you pull away from him and he isn't dead after all. That happened to me 2 or 3 times more while gaming than before. I would blame it on that for now. So yeah, I think that is a really good change and desperately needed, because it's simply not okay in a shooter game that you do the same damage to the chest as you do to the knee or something. So no idea, that is the 101 of shooters, I believe. That good aiming is simply rewarded, and that together with spread and recoil gives a pretty good picture after all. But I have to say, this change as well is a bit subtle. It's not like you do 50% less damage on the arm or something. But they learned a bit actually from the past, because we know this from earlier Battlefield titles. When something was strong there, they very often just overcompensated in the next patch, and then it was way too weak. So maybe they're trying to approach the perfect balance or the perfect recoil or whatever in smaller steps here, so that it doesn't flip back and forth like it usually does. That this would have ideally happened before release, and when the game came out, everything should have been perfect. We don't need to talk about that right now. That shouldn't be the topic of this video. We've chattered enough about that on this channel, and it's about this patch right now. Yeah, so restrain yourself in the comments, but feel free to leave one, of course. We also have a new event, which I actually find quite interesting, and that is that you can pick up contracts or tasks within a round. They are these little walkie-talkies in Conquest or on all modes, and then you have to do something as a squad. I don't know, something like 10 kills or damage a vehicle or something like that. I find that quite interesting because they aren't really difficult or big tasks, but it gives you a little twist and breaks up the usual gameplay a little bit. Let's say I play a lot of Conquest, for example, then you have a task like that which you can't just quickly get done. You can work together a bit in the squad. That maybe also promotes team play a little bit, but well, that could have been done better too. Closed weapons or whatever. And I find that quite refreshing. I think it's pretty cool. But what's the coolest thing about this is the melee weapon that you can unlock there with these events at the end of this event. Because it's this cool melee weapon, an EOD bot arm. So then you can beat up enemies with the arm of Wally, as I affectionately call him. I think that's totally awesome. It also doesn't take long. I'm sorry, but I simply find this melee weapon is funny. I think stuff like that is cool. Then supposedly the RPG got nerfed. I was a bit surprised by that because I've been playing the M136 for a long time now, because it is just overpowered, because it one-shots every heli, not the transport heli, but the other two. I've also made a video about it. I think it is way too strong. Whatever. I know pretty exactly from my own experience that that one does 550 damage to a tank from behind. Sometimes less, depending on the angle, of course, but if you shoot straight from behind, 550 damage. Now, with the RPG, 2 or 3 times I had the situation after the update that it only does 500 damage from behind. That really makes me wonder why, because a guided rocket launcher, which you can still guide into the target after firing, should surely do less damage than an unguided one. Just in general, really. By the way, the RPG does 1125 damage to a transport heli, and after that you can shoot it down with your MG or your normal weapon. Just keep that in mind for the clips, of course. But I will continue to play the M136, except on maps where there are only vehicles, because of course you're faster with the RPG. Still, on larger maps, that's no problem, so I will probably stick with that. I was a bit disappointed. I would have thought that the RPG does more damage. Maybe something will still change there. I found that weird. Netcode would be kind of the next topic that I briefly wanted to touch on. That was supposed to be improved too. And at the beginning I thought in the first matches, oh, the hit rate is actually better now. So from outgoing fire, you definitely notice somehow that somehow registers more consistently after the patch. But then I also died partially against super bullets, meaning all bullets arrive at once from the enemy or behind walls. I thought to myself, okay, outgoing damage is somehow registered better, incoming somehow not. That's once again such a weird discrepancy that again, many bullets arrive at you at the same time and you die super fast, because the time to kill is supposed to be a bit longer now too. So sometimes it works better, sometimes not. The netcode is absolutely not perfect, maybe a little bit better, so there's definitely still work to be done there. How have you experienced that so far? Tell me in the comments. And alright, the jets are still shit, unfortunately. So that really disappoints me a lot. Playing them becoming less and less fun for me in Battlefield 6. To that I have to add though, I didn't fly particularly much in 3 and 4 either, because the whole beeping of the stingers get on my nerves eventually. As I said, a detailed weapon test is coming, definitely stay tuned for that. And then the next highlight coming to Battlefield 6 is of course Season 4 with Naval Warfare and 2 new maps. I assume that they will bring Zuru Reef first from the new maps, because that would be logical to me now. There was Railway to Golmud and Cairo Bazaar, 2 remakes from old games, so it would actually be time now to bring a genuinely new map into the game that didn't exist before, especially since it will then also be the largest map and bring in boats and small ships. Now, I don't believe that this will take on the proportions of maritime skirmishes like in Battlefield 1, but there will definitely be boats and we'll see what awaits us there. And then later Wake Island will come. So I would guess that order. Zuru Reef and then Wake Island. So we are looking forward to that. Some kind of Hainan resort vibes, or maybe a little bit of Pacific Storm, something like that, we'll see. You catch that on this channel too, of course. So leave a like, leave a comment, and leave a sub, of course. Here's a new video for you to watch if you're interested. And with this button, you can sub to my channel. The update is definitely a step in the right direction, I think. It could go a little further still, but we'll have to see how it goes in the future. See you in the next video. Bye.